Hey, Fett fam, good to see you boys. How's everybody doing?
What's up?
Let's kick this off. We got Matt back in the house. It's good to see you, Matt. And we got
Yeah, so we're
Boba Diggity.
reviewing
Go ahead, Matt.
episode 3. We're reviewing episode 3. That's where I left off.
Yeah,
Yep.
Matt,
Close enough.
you're gonna have to tell your wife every now and then that you have other things to do.
Yes.
I know. Sorry.
Things that are more important than her.
I mean, this is Fett family. I know you're like,
Yeah.
all your family events and stuff, but this is
50-50.
This is also family. So we got Matt back in the action. Of course, we got my main man, Gabriel, on the Moto Z4. What's up, Gabriel?
I'm doing well. Everything is going well. I cannot wait to review this tonight.
Okay. And we've also got Boba Diggity, Darren Stevenson on the call. Good to see you again, Darren.
Good to be back.
No doubt.
Okay. Let's jump right into episode 5. We've only got 2 episodes left. And, as I was watching this episode, I realized that there are actually only 6 episodes of the Book of Boba Fett, because this clearly was not one of them. This was Mandalorian season 3.
This is Mandalorian
season 3, chapter 1.
Episode 0.
I don't know if anybody else was bothered by it, but I
was
found myself being a little disturbed by the fact that this was a Mandalorian episode and not a episode of Book of Boba Fett. It's hard to review it like a Book of Boba Fett episode. It really is.
Right.
What were your thoughts on that, Matt?
Yeah, it's hard to say it was a episode of Boba Fett when he wasn't even in the entire episode.
Correct.
He's mentioned once.
Yes.
The moment that Mando walks through the freezer drape at the butcher house,
The king is
like
back.
Yeah.
The king is back. I mean, we all knew it was coming.
I let out an audible.
Right. I mean, and that's fine. Like, you want to open the episode like that and have him come in and establish that he's back in the scene. I'm all for it. Let's go. Let's have a kick-ass Mando scene to get him rolling back into the world. But it just never stopped. We just stayed with Mando the entire rest of the episode. And I don't know. I would have liked to see a little bit more Boba Fett. I thought it played into a lot of the detractors of this series. There's a lot of people who, online are talking about how they don't like this series and Boba Fett's weak and blah, 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 blah. And this, I felt like, just reinforced everybody who doesn't like, let's watch Mando. I don't know. Gabriel, tell me what your thoughts were.
I was excited to see him at first, and then I was like, okay, this is going to somehow tie in to Boba Fett. This is going to somehow tie in. And it was just, it was a great Mandalorian episode, but a not so good Boba Fett episode.
Yeah. It seemed to me like just a little, maybe we should have 8 episodes. If we're going to dedicate one whole episode to Mando, let's have more, because I feel like there's not a lot of time left here for us to wrap this whole thing up. We were just setting up the main conflict, and it took us, 5 episodes to do that, really 4. And now we've got 2 left to kind of resolve it. But we'll see what happens.
Especially because we already know this character. We've seen his adventures. So we're not really learning anything very much new about who he is. So really what I care about is who they are together.
In a sense, we did learn a few things about Mando here, maybe things that we already left the last season knowing or being hinted at, but they just got confirmed here. And for instance, he's moving away from, or at least seems to want to move away from, that bounty hunter vibe into something where he's more like, I've got a tribe, right? The experience with Grogu and him, trying to create armor for him or whatever that is in that little package that he's delivering, so that's kind of new in the sense that we're seeing him like move away from his old life and, but he's still doing this sort of murder for hire bounty
Yeah.
hunting at the beginning of this episode, and he's not even really taking very much money, right? He's just exchanging for information. But let's dive in and look at the episode as we go, and just at least talk about some of the things that we loved about it, and break it down. So let's start with, as Matt started, he goes through that into the butcher shop that the dog people are running. I can never remember the name of these guys. What are they, Gabriel?
Those are called the Clatoonians.
Clatoonians, the Clatoonian butcher shop, and you got all this meat hanging from hooks, like in this big butcher shop, and walks through there, and all these guys are kind of looking at him sideways, but okay, whatever. Goes back there and has the face-to-face with this guy he's got a bounty for. Matt, break down that scene where he goes in there and he's there to collect this bounty.
Yeah, so the guy's giving him a run around. Oh, that's not me. I've never seen this guy. And he puts the puck down and it shows his face. He's like, yeah, it's kind of similar.
Yeah, that puck, we saw that in the Mandalorian where they said Fennec. Yeah. Fennec Shan was on the hologram. So this is and he also had the little beeper or the tracking beacon. Yeah. So we got a couple of things that we've seen, pieces of tech that the bounty hunter uses that reappear here in this scene. The guy's like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. But I also like that Clatonian, the head guy, the gangster. He's got the table of rebel credits there in front of him. And he's got some piercings in his nose and on his jowl. He's got some jowl piercings. I thought that was kind of cool. This is like, it's like a tough guy. Oh, here comes DJ. DJ, what's up? Okay, well, while he's connecting, so then he's basically like, look, you're surrounded. These guys aren't going anywhere. I love that sort of almost like in Unforgiven, where Clint Eastwood gives everybody an opportunity to leave the bar. Like anybody who doesn't want to die, you're free to leave now. And, otherwise, it's not going to be good for you. DJ, we're talking about the opening scene where he's in the Clatonians and, he's collecting the bounty. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So he basically goes postal on these guys. Break down the fight, Darren. What did you think of this fight?
I liked it. I remember watching it and thinking if I liked everything about it, except that I felt like I've seen all this before, which I know we've talked about already. But fight scene was great. The use of the dark sword, the fact that he gets injured. Saber.
Sword.
Yes.
This is Star Wars.
Keep him honest, Gabriel. Keep him honest.
17th century Britain.
Idiot. Now, did anybody else get very slight Rocky vibes?
Totally.
I just kept thinking about the scene where he's punching the
meat
bags of meat, except that he's killing people and chopping through it.
It's a great like setting for a gangster's sort of underworld boss. He's like running with these workers, all these guys with knives surrounding him. So he's well sort of positioned there. And it's a gift that keeps on giving, right? Everyone needs fresh meat. So it's got a lot of like sort of background symbolism too, these hanging carcasses. And so I like that setting too.
Yeah,
the one thing that we did see in that fight that I thought was pretty, at least I hadn't seen as much of that as we saw all condensed in that one period. He was shot at least like 20 times in that room. And every single shot hit a piece of Beskar or his back. Like, as far as the effectiveness of Beskar in keeping you alive when your back turned to an enemy, I'm just thinking, why aren't they shooting him in the ass?
Yeah. It's the Wonder Woman effect.
It's the Stormtrooper laser effect.
Shoot her in the wrists.
Yeah, they played with that a bit in Mandalorian, where he would like get shot point blank in the head or something like that, and it's like the armor's fine. But what's interesting to me is that they don't really, I haven't seen that at all with Boba Fett, but it's like a unique Mandalorian thing that whenever he's on screen, he's like a brawler who just like keeps getting hit by things the entire time. Whereas Boba Fett always seems like much more cool and calm and collected. So I think that was definitely an intentional choice during that fight to just have him just keep getting shot over and over, get knocked down. He hits himself with the Darksaber. Mandalorian's much more like rough with his fighting style.
It was a messy fight.
It was messy, exactly.
And it also showed, sort of alluded to or foreshadowed what we learned later in the episode. This is not an easy weapon to wield. It's one thing to wield a weapon like that if it's light and it's balanced. And even if you're untrained, you can end up cutting yourself or burning yourself. But this thing is like, you can see him even in that fight. When I went back and watched it a second time, he's dragging it on the floor as he's using it in the fight. So he doesn't have real control on that thing yet. And like I said, it alludes to what we learn later in the episode, that this thing is basically fighting against the person who's trying to wield it, which I thought was really kind of cool.
He cut himself, right? Didn't he?
He burned himself with the flat of the blade.
Yeah, he has no idea how to use it.
Yeah, it's just, it's not that he doesn't have any idea how to use it. It's just the blade is not easy to use, and he's not been trained on it. He's just slinging it around like it's a massive, heavy weight that cuts through things. It's pretty effective, even though he's not very good with it. He ended up doing just fine because of the power of the weapon.
Did you notice how at the very beginning of the fight, he said his signature line when the lead Platoonian asked him for his options? He said, "I can bring you in warm, or I can bring you in cold." And that
I love that. Yes, Gabriel, that was a great detail. You look like a man who's practical. Let's talk about our options. And he's like, I can bring you in warm, or I can bring you in cold. Yeah. So finishes the job, cuts the guy in half with the Darksaber, cuts the table in half, completely wrecks the room. And then you get the one guy who's like been apparently watching this whole thing unfold, one of the guards, who just scampers out at the last second. And then I love the directing on this episode, even though I didn't particularly love this episode very much in totality. The directing on this I thought was great. And it turns out it's Ron Howard's daughter who directed this.
Yeah, so she's directed an episode in every season of Mandalorian and one in this. They keep bringing her back, and she's done all like some of my best stuff, or my favorite stuff in Mandalorian. She did the episode in that farm, the like swampland farm where they were fighting the giant chicken walker.
Yeah,
and then in the second season, it was a very important episode. I don't remember what it was.
The one with Bo-Katan, I think.
Yes, yeah. The introduction of Bo-Katan and the blue armored Mandalorians. The first Mandalorians to be seen with their helmets off. Like that very pivotal episode that they gave to her, and now she's getting this next episode as well. I'd love to see her like get some bigger Star Wars property stuff. Like maybe her own movie or something like that, because I really love her directing style.
Well, didn't her dad do Solo or half of Solo? He took over.
He took over when the previous directors left.
That was a bit of a cluster, a mess. And I liked Solo on the whole. I actually enjoyed that movie, but this directing I thought was good, despite me not enjoying the episode so much. And one of the things that I loved about it from a director's standpoint is this scene where he's now taking the guy's head and he's in this, there's another plastic barrier, the Mandos, and now you got all the rest of the guys, all these workers. There's probably about 30 or so guys who, to be quite honest, could take him if they wanted to, but he just appeals to their greed. And he appeals to their, sense of survival and says, listen, your boss is dead. I've liberated you, basically. There's lots of credits in there for you. Doesn't even take a penny for this bounty. Matt, Does that show us anything about his growth?
Yeah, I guess he's showing a little bit of honor there, right? He's not stealing, but he's taking what he came for and what he came for only. So,
right. And then, I love the suspense of that where, we don't know what's happening there. And all those guys are waiting outside and you're going, okay, what's going to happen next? And then he comes out with the bag and the head and then, just basically says, I'm out of here. I thought that was well done from a director's standpoint. There was a little bit of suspense built there that kind of kept us in, oh, what's going to happen here? And then another piece right following up on that is where he's taking the head to the casino or wherever, the restaurant where the people who he's essentially working for this bounty are going to pay him. And that scene, I don't know if anybody caught it, but it's all one take.
Right.
Him going he goes from the spaceship, walking down that street where this Elysium style planet is revealed, it has that where the sun is kind of shining on it as it's moving and so you have some parts that are in darkness and some parts that are in light as whatever the hub of that ship is sort of rotating and shining light on it. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah. It's
totally
basically
reminded me of Elysium.
It's like it's this thing just in the dead of space, basically this man-made object. So how do you
in scale?
Exactly. So but you still need, if people are going to be living on this thing, you need a day-night cycle. So that was like their basically manufactured sun that they put in the center. And then
I was wondering if it was moving too fast, DJ.
It did seem like it was moving too fast. Yeah.
Right?
It stayed daytime for long enough when he was out. So maybe
it was still daytime when he came out. So
it also might have seemed like it was moving fast because of the scale of it. When we look up and see it in the sky,
right?
It's like that's so far away that it might look like it's moving faster than it actually is.
It was cool though. It was definitely
very cool. It was a very cool concept at the very least.
I agree. So we get this one long continuous take. And Matt, what does he collect for all of his hard work?
Just a small bag, right? Small bag of credits.
No, he doesn't even get credits. He just gets information. He doesn't even want to be paid. I mean, this guy. Show me where I can find my people. Where can I get to the underbelly of this? Because I know that those other two Mandos are waiting for me somewhere.
Yeah, that was nice to see them.
That was cool. That was cool.
The armor is there.
The armor, right? She seems to be like I don't know. Does she seem to you to be like sort of a gatekeeper of Creed knowledge?
Like a shaman.
Yeah. She's kind of like a gatekeeper of the Creed. She's a fact. That whole scene where she is asking them whether they had their helmet ever removed or not. And she stopped the fight when Mando's about to kill it. She has a power. She has like an unspoken power, but we don't even know what her name is. Do we?
Just
the armor.
The armor.
Yeah.
I guess in a society like that, it's all based around that Beskar armor and a warrior mentality. An armorer would be the priestess, would be the freak, the religious leader.
Because he said, my weapons are my religion, so she makes the weapons. So she's like the female priest. Yeah,
she's the high priestess in that society. That was cool.
There is something. I mean, there are parallels, right, in this episode with like Boba's long journeys that he was taking in the last couple of episodes. This is Mandalorians. Like I can see what they're trying to do. It's just his is done on foot. But there's like this weariness about like his religion. I think he's starting to lose it. He's like, oh, God, the like keeping up with the constant, the honor and then there's the bureaucracy, and now I'm injured, and I just like there just seems to be this general lethargy and weariness, like he's just over it on every level. He doesn't care about the money anymore. He's doing some things, but
well, just to respond to that, my thought is that in the same way that you might have, let's look at a Christian tradition, right? Where there are heart and soul issues of a Christian faith. And then there are very legalistic and very, like rule based and, outside of the realm of grace, where you can sort of get lost in these rules and regulations and judgments versus the more sort of looking at the faith as a inclusive and love based. And so I wonder if there's a tension here with Mando where, like, for instance, not ever taking your helmet off would be an example of one of these rules, which is highly impractical. And, so that makes me no longer a Mandalorian. Wait a minute, but yet the idea of having loyalty and having fidelity to a clan and having, like, solidarity with people around you. Those are the things he seems to be leaning in on versus the things that are a little bit more like, wait a minute, what's this weird rule?
He just seems, exhausted by it all. And he's still fighting. Like, in a minute, we're going to watch him fight over a saber that injured him, that he hates, that is fighting against him, but he's still going to fight to the death to keep it. And then he's disqualified because he took his helmet off once. It's like, really? Right. And I feel his grind.
No, I appreciate. I agree with you completely, and I think that's a great insight. The idea of how he's grappling with his creed, with this idea of his faith and his faith, and
it come butting into the world in which he lives.
Yes. Darren had to drop, or I'm sorry, Matt had to drop. Okay. Without even so much to say goodbye.
He's out at 7 o'clock. He's done.
You start talking about Christians, and he's like, "I'm out of here." He's probably got some kind of unresolved sin in his life. That's the only thing I can think.
Stop. We love our Matt. Well, it was great to have him for a little bit of time anyway. And DJ, you're all in for the rest of the convo?
Yep, I'm in.
Awesome. Well, here we're back with the episode 4 crew.
Welcome back.
How you doing, Gabriel? You hanging in there?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I am actually, as we speak, rewatching the episode.
Good.
You're getting your cramming in. Okay, so we got the armorer has now, he gives him this whole lecture about this Beskar spear that he's got. Here we're back in more religiosity of you can't use Beskar as an offensive weapon and it's against the creed. And
although, well, it was a very practical reason though that I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense, in that Beskar weapons can pierce Beskar armor, so it's like we don't want these weapons out in the world because we need to be invincible, and so they use religion to stop people from doing that, absolutely, but it is like a very practical reason
but it's very practical. But then in the next scene, when she's training him on the sword, she's using Beskar weapons to do it.
well not Beskar weapons, she's using the tools that make Beskar armor. So it's like, but you're absolutely right. It is like
those are weapons.
Like I'm allowed to have these. You can't.
Yes, she's the priestess. She can.
Yeah, exactly.
She's not going to use them for what nefarious purposes.
Oh yeah, of course not. Never.
But you're right, DJ. You're right. That is a good reason to not have them out in the world and to, as a practice, not have them exist or not use them. But here he is. He's got this spear, which seems a little redundant anyway now that he has the dark saber, at least if he can figure out how to use the thing. So he hands it over, and it seems like she's making something for Grogu, right? She's making a little miniature suit of Beskar armor, I guess.
They showed like they were little chains. I think it's going to be like a chainmail armor made of Beskar.
I agree,
which
DJ.
I'm like, oh man, I can't wait to see him in that.
Yeah, that's a great pickup. I saw that too, where you saw the little links falling.
Yep.
Mhm.
So there's clearly going to be, not that she had a lot of time to create such a thing. That would be an insanely tedious thing to articulate. Miniature little chains.
Want to talk about actually how as that chainmail was being made, we saw flashes of an event known as the Night of a Thousand Tears, which was
Talk about that, Gabriel.
which was the result of around the time of the original trilogy, Bo-Katan was gifted the saber and she did not win it in combat. Therefore, it kind of, as the armorer said, I guess, put a curse on the nation, which led to the Empire coming in a bunch of TIE bombers and completely blowing up the entire planet, including the capital city of Sundari. And then we saw the same droids from Rogue One in a kind of Terminator-esque scene. Basically killing all those survivors in a night known as the Night of a Thousand Tears.
Yeah, that had sort of a Judgment Day vibe to it. All those, Rogue One droids. I don't know the name of that droid.
K-series droids.
The K-series droids are marching across that, basically finishing off anybody who might be left, along with the Hoth drones that were, kind of following behind them. That was a bit ominous, that scene. But yeah, so we see how basically Mandalorian, or all the Mandalorians were killed, were destroyed. But some of them, I guess, got off to a moon or escaped that fate.
Well, it was the this sect was basically the like super extremists were basically correct me if I'm wrong, Gabriel, were basically exiled from the planet. Is that right? Like they were too extreme, or
the moon of Concordia.
Right. Yeah, basically that. So the group that Mando belongs to, this group that we're seeing here, they were basically extremists that were exiled from the planet. So they survived this event, as well as whoever else happened to be off world at the time.
Could we call them fundamentalists?
Yeah. But yeah, it's they would have been seen as extremists from the perspective of the other Mandalorians at the time. But
right,
yeah,
sort of like the Hasidic Jew versus like a Jew who maybe just goes to synagogue, does the basic,
Yep.
Exactly. You got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
They, although in like Clone Wars material, they're called Black Watch back in the Clone Wars era, and they do some pretty evil things, right? Or I'm trying to remember my Clone Wars history.
Is that the thing about Death Watch, though, is that they took their helmets off multiple times in that show.
Yeah, I wonder if that was just because they hadn't invented that idea yet.
Possibly.
Like the writers hadn't figured that out yet.
Yeah, there was no "this is the way" just yet.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway,
but as she's forging that, and they're talking about this past and the history of Mandalore and all this, there's also sort of talk of the guy. There was like a Mandalorian who was also a Jedi who originally wielded this dark saber.
Yes.
Who's that guy?
His name was Tar Vizsla.
Okay.
And was the first and only Mandalorian Jedi to be inducted into the order thousands of years ago.
Okay. And so this guy like sort of somehow was able to merge, even though, Mando makes a statement about how the Jedi creed, because she says, in order for a Jedi to be effective, they have to separate themselves from all attachment. And Mando makes a comment of, well, that's not the way. The way is about loyalty and solidarity. And so, I'm curious how that original Mandalorian who was a Jedi reconciled those, sort of opposing faiths and was able to.
He
Yeah, I
was
mean,
in
he was the only.
the Order during a period known as the Mandalorian Wars, when the Mandalorians were actually at war with the old Republic of the Jedi. And he somehow, they don't ever explain how, but he, I guess, made those values one or something.
Okay.
Yeah, because they were the big thing is that they were and still kind of are at odds with each other, Mandalorians and Jedi, to the point
Right.
of them basically being enemies with each other.
Mm.
So back in the thousands of years ago, that was a huge deal, and that's also why there's only been one ever in the course of history. There was only one guy who was able to do it.
Cool.
So
That's interesting. I thought that was an interesting point.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, like exactly. That's it's like, how did that even happen? We don't know. It was thousands of years ago. No one kept a log, I guess.
But you're right. It does kind of accentuate the uniqueness of that. The fact that these two faiths are diametrically opposed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Yeah, the Jedi are very Buddhist, aren't they?
Right.
The
Right.
closest corollary.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like, the Mandalorians are more like Spartans.
Yes, like a very sort of orthodox, community-based
Around
thing.
warriors.
Around, right? Yeah.
So we get this, scene of him now revealing that this Darksaber is not easy to wield. The whole idea that you have to win it via creed, through combat, and there's very strict rules around how this thing transfers from one person to another, and he's having a hard time. She's got those Beskar weapons. She's basically just kicking his butt and showing him how unwieldy he is. But I love there's a line in there that she says to him: persistence without insight leads to the same outcome. I just thought that was one of the greatest lines of the whole series so far. There's some of these like little jewels of wisdom that you can make a calendar around, Star Wars wisdom. But I thought that was excellent. Persistence without insight leads to the same outcome. When I'm in my classroom and I'm teaching robotics to the kids, sometimes I'll watch them and they'll have a robot that they've programmed and they run it over and over again with the same failing result. They won't change anything. They won't bring it back there's no analysis going on. They're just, maybe it'll work this time. Maybe it'll work this time. I call it botsturbation. It's persistence. It's persistence without insight. It's like, what are you learning here? What's the next step? Like, how can we improve it? But yeah, I thought that was a great line, and maybe we'll, trigger something in his mind that will help him to actually wield this thing. I would imagine at some point, whether we see it in Mandalorian episode, chapter 3 or season 3, we're going to see this Darksaber, and Mando is going to be wielding it quite effectively at some point, right?
Yeah.
That's coming down the pike.
Or this is my prophecy.
Uh-oh.
We're getting prophecies.
An early prophecy.
Saber ends up somehow going to Boba Fett.
Ooh, interesting. He would have to win it via combat.
I don't see that, just because Boba Fett isn't really interested at all in the Mandalorian stuff.
I agree.
He's not even a Mandalorian. Like, he just got, his dad got the armor some other way, and then the armor was passed on to him. Boba Fett's armor is its own separate thing, separate from the Mandalorian creed. So the only reason he would want it is as a weapon, but I don't think that the writers of the show would give such an important weapon to someone who doesn't care about it. You know what I mean?
Well,
unless you have a reason for it.
Some character development to get us there, right?
But they haven't hinted at him being interested in the Mandalorian stuff at all, right? Like, his story is all about
so far, no.
Tatooine.
But that's why that is why it's a prophecy.
Okay, so I can just say whatever I want and then call it a prophecy, and then it's fine.
Listen, EJ, there are some prophecies that are false, right?
Yes.
Don't come to fruition. Doesn't mean you can't go out on a limb and
so he's a false prophet, is what we're saying.
He's a false prophet.
If I'm right, I will never shut up about it. But if I'm proved wrong, this video will be deleted from the internet. No one will ever
Mysteriously
know.
disappear. Yep.
Okay. So let's move on. Paz Vizsla, who turns out is some sort of a, he's got some kin to the original guy, Tara Vizsla, who was this Jedi Mandalorian. He's like the last, somehow, what are the chances of this guy actually being related to him? But okay. And now he's like, well, I challenge you for the sword. Now there's only 3 of you left. Like, come on, really, guys? We're gonna lose one of you here. Like, I don't know. That was a bit for me.
Without insight.
It just showed it to me. It was another opportunity for an action sequence. It was another opportunity to show how the sword is hard to wield, because it was even harder for that guy to wield it than it was for Mando to wield it. And as soon as Mando didn't have to deal with it anymore, he cut that guy to ribbons because he's jumping all around, slicing him and dicing him with that little vibro dagger. And, the fight was over very quickly as soon as that guy's like, yes, finally, it's back in my clan. And then, 30 seconds later, he's got a knife to his throat.
That guy, no, I don't know if in this show too, but I know that we saw him in The Mandalorian, and he was actually played by Jon Favreau.
Okay.
Oh, interesting.
Okay.
I'm gonna look that up real quick to see if he also played this.
If Favreau was in this episode, he was a big guy. He is definitely a big guy.
Yeah, I loved that, by the way, that he was that he was like kind of a bigger, like whenever you see the guys in their Mandalorian armor, it's always like slim, they're muscly guys, and you see this just like big dude in this armor coming in to wreck you up.
This guy was definitely a different, and also intimidating. You see somebody in that armor, but the armor that he had, you could see was a bigger grade. It was like the XXL version of the. There's a lot of Beskar on that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So he the armor stops the fight, and now we're suddenly he's got whatever he needs. He knows he's got to go and get his ship. It's the time for the next chapter. He's got what he wanted, what he came for, which was to find the armor, get this little gift for Grogu, and now he's got to sort of get his ship so he can ultimately reunite with Grogu and find Luke Skywalker, who he handed Grogu off to. So he's working on that, and he goes to the spaceport. And we get this great scene, as Darren says, the guy with the clipboard. In this case, it's a droid, the TSA agent.
Yes.
Go ahead.
All of the action you could get rid of if you keep these kinds of moments. I love it. And I loved how long it was. But it's not just you can't take your weapons. Okay, it's we're going to watch him place every single thing.
It was also so long, Darren, that like everybody else was already in the ship. There was nobody left. Like there was this long line when he started checking his weapons, and at the end of it, there's no one else there.
I've been there, like going through TSA. If I've got a thing, I fly a lot, and most of the time I'm pretty kind of stripped down, but sometimes I've just got a lot of crap on me, and all of this stuff has got to come off. And that's got to come.
Now I don't know if any of you guys are going to remember this or get this reference, but did you see Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome?
Sorry,
it's a 1980s. Tina Turner is in this thing, but there's a scene in that fairly early on where Mad Max goes into this place called Bartertown. He's coming to this weird post-apocalyptic town, and the guy at the gate is like, "You got to check your weapons." And there's this scene where he's just forever pulling all these things out of trench coats and that out of his back and down in his boot, and he just fills this whole bin filled with weapons. This reminded me of that scene in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. It's exactly the same thing.
I mean, there's an interesting because I was sort of thinking, okay, well then when he gets like this is going to be a major plot point, that when he lands, the saber is going to be gone or something, but he got everything back.
Yes.
But there was a moment in this that was interesting, which was I don't think the Mandalorian we knew in the series would have relinquished everything, because he points out, well, this is part of my religion. And they're like, well, then you can't fly. And he's like, all right, fine. I'll just, he's essentially saying, all right, fine. I'll give up my religion. I'll make this compromise. And he just has never seemed like a man of compromise prior.
Yeah, he's
and
like,
now
okay, fine.
He's exhausted. He's tired. It's starting to slip. It's just get me on the flight.
I'll take the vaccine. I'll wear a mask. I'll get on the plane.
Yes. Yeah.
So
just want to jump in really quick to mention that Jon Favreau did play that character that fought Mando.
Awesome. Awesome.
So that was him.
Found out that the character's name is actually Paz Vizsla.
Yes. That's a nice little Easter egg. Good job. Well done, DJ. Okay, so now he goes up in the plane. He's looking at the little package that he's going to deliver to Grogu. He's clearly willing to do these things because his motivation is to be reunited with that little Jedi, that little budding Jedi, you know. And it's kind of sweet, you know. It's like a dad who's wanting to be reunited with his child in some way. Just like he misses the little guy. And I love the way the package even looks like Grogu. It's got like the little center, and it's got the little ears coming out of the side of it, right? Did you guys catch that when she handed him the package? He's looking at it.
Yeah, I was like, very on the nose, but
it's a little almost too accurate, but it was an obvious little connection, but I like that. So he finally gets on the plane, everything's good, he's traveling, and now we're back on Mos Eisley.
Oh, just before we get there, it's another nice little moment where because I see him as turning from a person of honor to a person of community. And he's constantly being so he's now on this ship, and that little moment where there's the kid sitting in front of him, which I have had this happen to me. It's great. And and he's sort of confronted with children and with and of course that reminds him of Grogu and everything. But there's
there's another scene, Darren, later when he's in the Starfighter and he pulls up next to a freighter, and the little Greedo kids are looking at the glass, you know. It's goofy, it's corny, but it also is revealing of how this he's a softie for kids, you know. So he shows up on Mos Eisley. Pelimoto is being, eaten by a womp rat. She's gotten pulled to the ground, and the droids are no help whatsoever. Which to me is a little like, wait, come on, man. Like, how long has she lived on this planet? She doesn't have any measures in place to deal with something like this. But Mando comes in, saves the day, lasers the womp rat, and she's got this great line where she's like, fire up the grill before that thing gets gamey. So clearly that's what's for dinner. And now we go into this extended, sort of scenes about them constructing this starship, which he's actually there for his original spaceship. What happened to my Razor Crest? And he's got this big battle freighter, and now he's essentially being reduced to a starship. And I don't know about you guys, but it felt like Rust Valley Restorers. It felt like a reality TV show of these like Orange County choppers, where it's this old piece of crap vehicle from the old Republic, and they're having to restore it. Go ahead, Gabriel.
Did you notice that is the same ship that in the Phantom Menace Anakin used to blow up that big droid ship?
Yeah, it's a Naboo. It's a Naboo Starfighter.
Yeah, I want to jump in real quick to say that I loved all of that, and I think that it's different for me just because when I was growing up, those movies, the prequels, were the best movies ever made because they were made for me at that age.
Okay.
Like, I was young enough to completely love them and 100%. So I see this ship being built and I'm like, oh my God, it's the ship from Phantom Menace. Okay. Oh my God, this is the best thing ever. I'm waiting to see the ship built. I see all the little bits coming in. There's my cat. So I'm just and then powering it up, all the sound effects from that. I'm like, oh, it was a huge nostalgia boost for me. So for me, this what I loved everything about
Well,
that stuff.
I think that's a great insight. So for your generation, it worked because
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
harkens back to Phantom Menace. For my generation, I think it works because a lot of guys are into that garage style, restoring an old vehicle, and that's what for me, it was just like so uninspiring.
Yeah, it was way
so
too long for this show.
It was just out of the pocket from
Very
what was
drawn
going
out.
on. And
Unless this
ahead.
is why we need Curtis on this episode.
he would. I bet he loved that scene.
Yes.
Yeah, all the terminology they were using. I also enjoyed it, I think, just because it is like the spaceships in Star Wars, like how they work and all of that is all made up. So they're just speaking gibberish for the most part. And I kind of like love that sort of technical lingo when it's like none of this is supposed to make sense. They're putting random bits of metal into other random bits of metal, but it all kind of works. And I like that somewhat. I like thinking back to like the writer's room or like the perspective of the person that had to make all of the internal parts of this working spaceship that is just made up. It's fantasy. And someone had to say, what would this look like if it was made? But I agree that in a 30-minute episode, why was half of the episode them building this starship? I agree with that.
Thank you, DJ. And
especially given it's the Book of Boba.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Mando and Boba.
You know what? If you wanna create a Netflix series called Flip This Ship, and we got, then I'm all in. I'll watch that. But I know what I'm getting.
Watch that, absolutely.
I know what I'm getting. I would totally watch that, but I know what I'm getting. I've got like droids running around. I got Jawas coming in with spare parts. How about the weirdness of Pelimoto has dated a Jawa and they're furry, and that was a little weird.
That was definitely improv. That was definitely improv. That wasn't written out. That was her making it up on the day 100%.
There were several lines though there,
she made it up on the set and then they were like, that's hilarious. Let's do an entire scene about it. Absolutely. I don't think that anyone would have written that in the writer's room. That's something that would have been made up on set and someone thought that's hilarious and let's keep it in, let's expand on it, and then they had to keep it because that was a whole part of the scene.
I hope you're right because then
it is very much her, like Amy Sedaris, like that's been her career of doing these really sort of bizarre off the wall.
Right.
If you ever a weird funny thing to watch is like back in the 90s she would show up on the Letterman show every now and then and would do like a cooking spot or some weird thing. And was always just
speed for sure.
Yeah, just very funny. Yeah,
she's good. And I liked her in this. It added a nice, little zaniness. Actually, something that was absent from her character in the earlier episodes of Mandalorian.
Right.
We never really got to see her very much at all.
No.
This kind of developed her more than they ever did in that series.
Yeah.
Okay. So they get the starship up and running, and now it's time for him to go test drive it out in the canyons. We get that cool shot, which sort of mirrored the pod race. It
was the same set as the pod race. It was the same,
area, right?
Yeah.
Do you mind if I point out a quick Easter egg from when they were building?
Go ahead.
So actually, speaking of the Jawas, one of the parts that the Jawas brought up to be used in the ship was the same thing that Han Solo used to brace the trash compactor in A New Hope.
Yeah, I got that too.
Yeah. It was like a long metal piece, and I remember thinking to myself, well, "That looks familiar." Yeah, you're right. That's the thing they used to try to brace the walls.
Yes.
And now it has a Star Wars. Modern Star Wars is basically just explaining and justifying every little teeny tiny detail in all of the previous Star Wars movies. Like now we know what this rod was that Han Solo picked up. Did we need to know that? No, but now I know it, and I'm much happier for knowing it.
We also know it was from, like a pre-Republic, pre-Empire ship.
Yeah,
So
it would have been from one of these ships specifically.
It would have belonged down in that trash compactor because, that's space trash.
Yeah.
For that era. Okay, cool. So he's running through the canyons, which harkens back to the pod races. And then finally he just opens this thing up because he's got to figure out how to fly this thing. He's used to a big clunky, Razor Crest. Now he's got maneuverability. He's whipping around like a little muscle car, and he goes straight up out into space. We get the great shot of him next to the cruiser with the kids, the little Greedo kids. And then we have that scene where the X-Wings pull up. Woo! 5-0.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love it.
Same guys from the Mandalorian scene, the guy even says,
one of them was, I think one of them was, the other one was a rookie.
Somebody else. Yeah.
The guy with the facial hair was the same guy from the previous episode of Mandalorian. And I thought that was a cool little scene.
Character.
It was a great little scene because we saw like Mando trying to work with them and trying to figure it out, and they're trying to decide what they want to do. And he's like, you know what the hell? What? And just takes off a shot. He's gone.
Yeah.
That was cool.
I loved all of that for the exact same reason I mentioned with them building the ship, where it was like, it's the ship from the Phantom Menace.
Yes.
Just be freaking out the whole time. And I'm like, and the way that it was so zippy, the way that they showed speed on it and everything, like it was, again, back to kind of good directing and able to kind of it's filming it differently than the Razor Crest and just making it this super zippy ship. They did a really good job on
and
really selling that.
As they were building it, DJ, you saw that he was adding a lot of stuff that she wasn't even put on it. He was saying anything that's going to amp this thing up and get it even faster. Let's go ahead and get these Jawas on that. And
I tell you, a big reason it has to be faster. The other ship he had, the Razor, he lived in that. Like, he could walk around in it. Presumably, there's a bathroom in there. In this ship, you can't poop in this thing. It's got to be fast, because if you're traveling anywhere of distance, if you don't get there right away, you've got problems.
No, that's a point not lost.
Where is the flushing toilet?
Yeah, there isn't one.
I want to know.
Maybe he's got to build one in his suit.
In the droid compartment that he's not using.
That he's not using. Yeah, I guess so.
Oh man, did you see how they set that up specifically for Grogu? Like having that back seat
we're
with
totally,
the pod open.
It's totally seeing Grogu in the next episode.
Yeah,
no
yeah, exactly. If Grogu doesn't show up in this series, whenever the next Mando season is, and he's going to have this ship, and he's going to have little Grogu in the back.
Yes, you're right.
It's going to be great. I can't wait.
And we're also going to probably see Luke Skywalker again.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's difficult because it's very expensive now for them to have him in there, because they got to do all that de-aging stuff. So it's Disney, so they have money. What? I know. But they have to think about it. I mean, they can do these shows cheap because they have that whole the volume, they call it, which is like that dome where they can where they basically can project onto the dome or as basically TVs all the background stuff, so they don't have to worry about green screen. They film it in camera and then they're good to go. Right. So they are filming these fairly cheaply, relatively. So it is a big deal.
He heads back to the world. He lands the ship. He's sold, right? He's all in now. He knows this is my ship. And here comes Fennec. And Fennec basically tells him, look, Boba Fett needs some help, and we're willing to pay you. She's got money. And he's like, it's on the house. So once again, this guy, just his ethic has just changed, where he's like, you know what? This is an opportunity to do good. And these are people who were loyal to me in the past. I trust them. I'm going to do this for whatever they need. And we're going to get to see Mando and the Starfighter teaming up with Boba Fett in the next episode. I don't know if that's all the muscle they need, but it certainly doesn't hurt to have Mando in a starship like this, a Starfighter, on your side against the Pikes. So let's talk about fetishes and things we're looking forward to. Gabriel, what are your fetish? What's your favorite part, and what are you looking forward to in episode 6?
I'm looking forward to seeing if we are going to be seeing Luke Skywalker teach the Mandalorian how to use the dark saber properly.
Ooh,
Oh.
that would be cool.
And my favorite part was the part where we actually got to like see like that this dark saber can't just be wielded by like anybody. You have to basically earn the use of this weapon.
Cool. All right, Darren, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I got my my prophecy out of the way. You know, I don't know whether it happened. I think you guys may have talked me out of that idea, but the idea that the saber
go back on it. I like it actually.
Come on, false prophet.
Goes to Boba Fett. I mean, I did like the episode as a standalone thing. If this were a long-running series, if we had 20 episodes, I would have no problem with it.
Well, you just got to watch The Mandalorian then.
Yeah, right. So
season 3.
It just felt like we did all of this work just to set up the next episode. I don't know. But again, there's these lovely moments in it. These great little scenes. These, you know, again, like the constant building of the bigger world and the sort of mundane bureaucracy that is imposed on them. I mean, one of the things, because when I was first watching the Star Wars movies when I was a kid, what made them amazing was how rich the details were. And you kept seeing things where you're like, man, that, like, it's so well done that I can imagine that there would be a whole story about this guy's life or about this thing over here. And in shows like this, you know, with this, sometimes with the slow pacing, you get to see that. Like, what is it where it's just a guy building a ship or a person having to take public transportation in the Star Wars universe? Like, what's that like? And having those moments, I can't get enough of that.
Cool. All right, DJ.
Yeah, I mean the big takeaway from this is I think that the ship is awesome. I know it's not practical as like a bounty hunting ship necessarily. Like the Razor Crest was definitely like a giant RV, so it makes sense. But I just like it's like I love what they did with the ship. I love all the modifications, the way that it's different to the original Starfighter just enough, but still kind of retains the profile and the speed. I'm excited to see how he's going to use that like more in maybe combat and stuff like that. I do agree that the episode as a whole is kind of a filler-ish episode where at a Boba Fett scale, where it's like in the Boba Fett series this season, this is a filler episode because it doesn't really have to do with Boba Fett. It's just showing this other guy. But as a Mandalorian episode, I thought it was great. I really enjoyed every moment. I loved seeing the growth of this character since we last saw him. Like, he finds his people and then they're like, nah, you can't be with us anymore because you're too relaxed about the rules. And now he's off doing his own thing. They kind of covered all of that in this little 30-minute episode. So I don't know. I loved it. Prophecy wise, I nothing to prophesize, but I really am looking forward to the next few episodes now, like knowing that that Mando's going to be in it, that I can't wait to see him fighting alongside Boba Fett and Fennec again. And just kind of seeing those two characters, Boba Fett and Mando, like doing some back-to-back stuff is all I'm looking forward to. The one moment where they go back to back with their guns firing at being surrounded by enemies,
Flamethrower
like
on one side, missiles on the other.
exactly. That's how I'm looking forward to it.
Sitting on the Rancor.
Yeah,
Sitting
exactly.
on the Rancor, yeah.
Oh man, yeah, we got to get the Rancor
We got
in
to
there.
get that going. So for me, my favorite part was the just the opening, because it was exciting to see Mando back on the scene, and how that they built that whole thing up just to establish that he's back. He just kicked ass, but he did it in sort of a brawling sort of way, like you pointed out, DJ. I love that opening fight. To me, the rest of the episode was kind of just sort of more character building for the Mandalorian. I wasn't into the whole Rust Valley Restoring Tatooine edition sort of reality show that we watched, but I get why it's appealing. And I think the only reason I didn't like it so much was because I was expecting an episode of Boba Fett, but all kind of cool stuff, and all kind of, I still geeked out on a lot of it and loved it.
Yeah.
And the thing I'm looking forward to is we've just seen 2 episodes back to back where these 2 main characters have reestablished their ships and their relationship with the ship. And so I think we're going to see those 2 ships actually do the most damage to the Pike Syndicate. They're both very unique, but also highly dangerous in the hands of a capable pilot. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the 2 guys do with those ships in battle against the Pikes. That's it. We covered everything. I appreciate you guys bouncing in again and being a part of the episode. We appreciate all of you who have watched, and I hope you enjoy it. And like, subscribe, enjoy. We got 2 more episodes to go after this one, and the Fett fam is strong. Hopefully next week we'll get Curtis back. We'll get Tony back. We'll get Matt back. We want to have an episode where everybody's involved and in the mix. So appreciate you guys. It's great visiting with you, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye.